Hi, this is Dr. Goldkamp, and welcome back to another episode of the Keto Naturopath. So I wanted to continue what I was talking about last time, which was a protein-sparing modified fast and what it can do for you and why you should use this as a tool probably for the rest of your life. The overview was pretty deep, but I wanted to pick out a few specific details that I think most people miss, and they think this is just another dietary scheme. This is not a dietary scheme. This is a profound experience that I want you to have for yourself by doing it correctly. Okay, so let's get started. So we talked for quite a bit last time, and I wanted to go over when you consider any sort of dietary approach, whether it's a fast or not fasting, you really have to think about the most important macronutrient, which is protein. And you also have to think about what your muscles experience. Your muscles and having muscle strength is the number one important factor that has to do with all-cause mortality, whether you're dying from an accident or a fall or even illness, cancer, so on and so forth. So it is a big deal. And this is why if you start with this focus in mind, initially the rest will go well. But this has to be right up front. So we're talking about muscles and muscle strength and musculature and muscle mass. All those mean the same thing. So often people talk about fasting as in no food for a period of time, of course. I find that basically unnecessary, certainly nothing longer than a 3-day fast, and I've done a number of fasts. One of the problems with fasting, and it's not been proven, but it's often alleged, is that you lose muscle mass. The reason that is hard to verify is because when you do a before and after CAT scan, for example, what you find is, yes, the muscle mass is contracted, it's much smaller, but that is not the same thing as saying you lost muscle mass because you lose your glycogen, your glucose supplies, if you will, okay? So it's not a black or white issue. I do believe that your muscles are, your muscle mass is compromised, and that's why I want this focus. We talked about last time how sarcopenia or age-related sarcopenia is a big deal for everybody. So you can look one way, but if you don't have enough musculature underneath, you will feel and you will look an entirely another way. And to be both overweight or obese and to be under-muscled is perhaps the worst position to be in. So we're talking about muscles here, okay? All right. So we also talked about TOFI. What does it mean for TOFI, which is thin on the outside and fat on the inside? And these are just some CAT scans of exactly that. This is just another way of saying that one is under-muscled. They may look good, but they're under-muscled. And it's a health issue. It's not a visual problem only, it's a health issue. So today we're going to talk about how to maximize the benefits, how to really do this precisely without spending a lot of time in technicalities, but there's a few things you need to know that are really going to help. One of the things people think about when they start fasting is, okay, yeah, I believe in intermittent fasting. Okay, fasting, I will not eat for a period of time. Well, clearly, that's kind of the definition of the word of fasting. But in a protein-sparing modified fast, protein is the thing that you do have. And having a whole food source of protein, lean protein. So we're not having a powdered protein. We're having, it's chicken, it's fish, it's steak, it's lamb, it's, you name it. Whole food sources, it's pork. And I prefer animal sources. It's much more difficult to do this as vegetable sources of protein, by the way. People ask that a lot. So it's the protein, and having the protein at specific times is key. Let's get into it. So really the key to maximizing the effects of the protein-sparing modified fasts, PSMF, is to know how much protein you're required to have per day on a daily basis, how frequently to have it, and when to have it. So in the big picture, we're going to learn how to calculate how much protein you need each day. And let's get to it. To calculate your ideal body weight, where do you go for your ideal body weight? Well, you certainly can go online and check a lot of different calculators, but I'll show you what I use, which is a good rule of thumb, okay? So let's start for women. Basically, we're going to say women, 5 feet or taller, is 100 pounds. You start with 100 pounds, and for every inch over 5 feet, you add 5 pounds. So if they are 5'6", then you're going to add 6 times 5 is 30. That's 130 pounds is their ideal weight. So here you have a picture of that. Different heights, 6 feet, 5'6", 5 feet. And basically, we're saying, what is their ideal weight? Well, if they're 6 feet, it's 160 pounds. If they're 5'6", it's 130 pounds. And if they're 5 feet, it's 100 pounds. Basically what I just told you. And at the bottom, it talks about kilograms, and we'll use that label in a second. So 100 pounds plus 5 pounds for every inch they are over 5 feet. So a 6-foot woman would be 160 pounds. Okay. Same with men, but you're going to start a little higher. Start with 110 pounds and add 5 pounds for every inch. Same thing. So it's off by just a little bit. This is a rule of thumb. Is there much science behind it? It's pretty darn close. If you go out and calculate, try various calculators which are set up to ascertain your very specific ideal weight, you'll find they're within a couple pounds of this rule of thumb. So this way you can remember, what is your ideal weight? What's your height? If you're 5'2" and you're a female, then it's 100 pounds plus 10. That's 110. And that's ballpark. So I want this to be a target, not something that you're dying to get right to that poundage. It might even be a lot. It might be 5 pounds less, but be within a few pounds of this is a great target. Once you get there, if that's your goal, then you can adjust it further. But this is the target we're shooting for. Let's have the big picture. So, for example, we're going to use the woman who is 5'6". The required total amount of whole food protein, I keep on saying whole food protein for an entire day, is 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. Now I'm going to tell you a little story. My mother was a dietitian before I was born. And I remember when I was in high school, or maybe it was even in college, I was a zoology major in college. So I asked her, well, how much protein is required that we need to have on a daily basis? The thought just dawned on me, that there was something that was required for what you eat. You just don't eat all the time. And she said it's 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. And I thought, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She just mixed up grams and pounds. And I won't ask again because I'm sure that's the wrong answer. So here we are, 50 years later, figuring out that she was 100% right. So there you go. There's a lesson for why kids don't believe their parents. I don't know. And I was getting into science at the time. So we have 130 grams of of the amount of protein they need, and the ideal body weight is 130 pounds for a woman who's 5'6". Okay, pretty straightforward. And if you want to convert this to grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and why you might want to do it, you don't need to for this calculation, but often when you read about various diets and comparisons, so for instance, a lot of the scientific papers have to do with low-carb diets. They measure protein on a kilogram body weight. So grams of protein per kilogram body weight. So that calculation is 2.2 grams. Is that high? Not really. It's normal to have, well, you should have at least 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. But to get up to 2 is not a big deal, or 2.1. Maybe 2.2 is the beginning of a slightly higher level of normal. But I'm up about 3 plus grams per kilogram of body weight. We'll get into that later. Okay, so we'll get on to men. It's the same thing, pretty much. 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. Now we're dealing with the same height man, 5 feet, 6 inches tall, and it's only slightly marginally more. It's 100 grams of protein per day, and his ideal body weight is 140 pounds. Same thing. This works out to 2.2 grams of kilogram per body weight. Okay, now that you know your total amount of protein required for an entire day, what's next? Well, this next step is really what I consider the small miracle of the protein-sparing modified fast. I'm making a big effort to really spell out all the small pieces to put this together in 4 series, in 4 different videos, because I think it is so important. First, you need your total per day, of course. And now we need to know this special little thing, which is what is the minimum amount of protein that you need to have to stimulate muscle growth. So we talked last time about how protein, just consuming protein in itself, regardless of exercise, regardless of if you sat on the sofa and that was the extent of your activities on a daily basis, when you eat protein, it will stimulate muscle growth up to a point. Okay, so we're going to calculate this. What is the minimal amount of protein to have that will stimulate muscle growth for you in any snack or meal? Apologize for the misspelling. Okay, when you eat protein, make sure to eat enough to maximize the benefit. Okay, so we're talking about what is the minimum you should eat. So if you're going to go snack on protein during your protein-sparing modified fast, make sure you're having enough to maximize that protein, that muscle mass stimulation. Okay, so what is that? Well, there actually is a number to figure out. Have at least 0.18 grams. It sounds technical, doesn't it? We'll get into this and I'll have it calculated for you. Have at least 0.18 grams per pound of ideal body weight of protein, whole food proteins, per meal or snack. There's no additional benefit to having more than that. So in other words, if you thought to yourself that, gosh, I've heard that I should just have 1 meal a day, that would maximize everything, that would not be the case here. That would absolutely contradict that. So do not do an OMAD, 1 meal a day. Spread it out to as many meals or snacks as you can, because now you'll be stimulating muscle growth throughout the day. You're not going to be Herculean by the end of this, but you'll be sparing it. You'll be making sure that it is not breaking down. It is not atrophying. And we're not talking about exercise, by the way, okay? So there's no additional benefit to having any more protein at any one time than just this amount. So what does this look like? When you have protein, it stimulates an increase in muscle synthesis. That's amazing. Just by having protein, it stimulates muscle synthesis. So again, 0.18 grams per pound of ideal body weight. This amount should be the minimum you have at any time you eat during your fast. This is the small miracle I refer to when I talk about the protein-sparing modified fast. Okay, here's a chart that I put together. For example, a man will do one on a woman as well. So we talked about height over here by 2 inches. The ideal weight for men. So here's the guy we're talking about, 5 feet 6 inches, 66 inches. His ideal weight is 140 pounds. So what is the smallest amount of protein that he could have? The minimum amount to create the maximum benefit, right? The minimum amount. So if he had half this, he'd still get some muscle stimulation, but he'd get more muscle synthesis by having up to 25 grams, right? So you can have less and you'll get some effect. But if he had 50 grams, twice that, he wouldn't get any more effect than as if he had only 25 grams of protein, okay? There you go. So that's his ideal body weight, protein he needs per day. That's the size of his snacks, if we're going to call it, or his meal in the very least. That's his ideal body weight. Now for women, it's pretty much the same thing. Same height woman, slightly less ideal body weight, 130 pounds for 5'6", 24 grams, call it the same thing, and 130 grams total per day to be consumed. Okay. All right, so now that you know the amount of protein you need per day and the minimum amount for any meal or snack, what's next? You already know the miracle, right? No, there's more coming. All right, so you know what your daily amount of protein should be. We've calculated that. You now know how to calculate what the minimum amount of protein to have that will stimulate growth for any snack or meal that you have throughout the day. What does the minimum amount of protein actually look like? So if I said, all right, go have 25 grams of steak, sirloin, have 25 grams of skinless chicken, what does that look like? How much is that? How many ounces? Any idea? No, you have no idea. And this is basically a list that I've come up with, that these are grilled skinless chicken breast, skinless turkey breast. So this is not forever always that you're never having skin. I have chicken with skin on it, but in the 3 or 4 days per week when we're going a little leaner, right? This is when we are doing at home in our house, we're doing the protein sparing modified fast. We've worked it into our lifestyle and it's fine. It's amazing all the good food you can have. So you are not hard up for food. So, but you do have to take some time to measure out. All right, how are you going to measure 2.85 ounces of grilled skinless chicken and ballpark it? This is not rocket science. This is not something that's going to make it or break it. You're looking for 25 grams of protein in a whole food source. So 2.85 ounces, you get a food scale and you put it on there and you figure out how much that is. So for whatever piece you have, you can calculate how much protein is in that piece, and then you can figure out what size piece is 25 grams. We're going to do a visual, and I'll show you more specifically at another video of what this looks like, but this is just a good place to start. You'll notice when we're dealing with whole food sources of protein that you get protein and you get some fat, and you'll probably get a calorie or two of carbohydrates, because all fat, as I mentioned, has glycogen in it someplace. Okay, 4 ounces of roast skinless turkey breast. Pretty much, there's a little fat there too. 3.5 ounces of grilled lean sirloin equals about 25 grams of protein. See, these are all ballpark, 25, 25, 25.8, 30, 26. 4 ounces of light tuna, 5.5 ounces of cooked shrimp. And you could make up something, 2/3 a cup of all white liquid egg whites if you want, or separate the yolks and make your own egg white, which is what we do. And you can mix that with a 2/3 a scoop of whey protein if you want. We've talked about whey before, but in this context, it's okay to have it. Okay, and there you go. So that's ballpark what you're looking for in terms of 24, 25 grams of protein per serving. If you have more than this, you're not maximizing. You're having more protein, but you're not getting any more benefit. If you have a number of these snacks, we'll call them, throughout the day, then you will be maximizing the stimulus of the protein sparing fast on synthesizing muscle mass for you. It's pretty remarkable. Few people know that. They think, oh, protein sparing modified fast is I just have lean protein, or they'll mix up a slurry of their gym protein drink. No, it's not that at all. And we've talked before, if you do it that way, the protein formulas you see at the gym, you're more than likely to get very nutrient deprived in a while. Okay, so when do you have this? Do not feel that you have to have all your food at one meal, because you've heard intermittent fasting is required to lose weight. Intermittent fasting is fine, so I'm not speaking badly of that. I'm saying in this case, you will do fine, and more than likely, the more frequent meals that you have will help you throughout the day. So if you took, let me go back to that slide, if you took, for example, a woman, 130 grams is what she has to have throughout the day, and you divide that by 24, that's ballpark about 5 different small meals that she can have. Or you can have a breakfast of this, and then a lunch, and then a dinner. So however you want to break it up, this allows you to be much more flexible. You're not locked into, oh, I can't eat now. I didn't say you couldn't eat now. I said, pay attention to what your total is, and then use this. It's like you have money during the day. You have so much to spend during the day, spend it wisely. But there's a lot of flexibility. You don't have to spend it just in once, and you're going to sit down and have your steak or your pork or your chicken, whatever it's going to be, or your fish. There's better ways to spend your protein money. Okay. So for example, the woman who requires 130 grams of protein per day and a minimum of 25 grams per meal or snack, that means that the meal she can have, she has about 5 snacks or about 3 meals per day. 130 grams of protein divided by the 25 grams, so the minimum amount per meal of the snack is a little over 5 snacks a day. Pretty straightforward. And in truth, how we do it now, I haven't measured anything for a couple of years. And I'm still amazed at how well this works. It's even more simple than this, but I do believe you need to get an idea of the amount of these things. And after that, you can forget about it. You've seen that's what it is. So it's not about measuring every meal. It's do it once. Oh, that's how much protein is in my steak. That's how much protein is in my skinless chicken. Do that once before you go grill it and so on and so forth, or after you grill it, however you want to do it. And yeah, there's a difference, but that means nothing. Those are such small details. Don't worry about it. But that's it. That's what it comes down to. So after you get through this, just looking at it once, forget about it. I have not used a food scale in years, though when we coach people, we do tell them to get a food scale, and I ask them to give me an example, because once they know how to do it, they can let it go. It's nothing you have to keep doing. Okay, so till next time, I hope you appreciate that. Take care.